Welcome to the INFOWARS Nightly News. It is Tuesday, May 26, 2015, and I'm Leanne McAdoo. Here's a look at what's coming up tonight.
Tonight, comparing the world economy to the Titanic, HSBC fears worldwide recession with no lifeboats in a world drowning in debt. Then, a senior NATO official says we'll probably be at war this summer. With any luck, it won't be nuclear. All that and more on tonight's INFOWARS Nightly News.
According to a senior NATO official, we'll probably be at war this summer. And if we're lucky, it won't be nuclear. Now, this is what was tweeted out by former NSA intelligence analyst John Schindler. And a lot of people are speculating, was he leaked this information in an effort to show the seriousness of what's going on? Schindler is a former U.S. Naval War College lecturer. He's also known to have many high-level military contacts. Now, he didn't really specify in this tweet, but no doubt the reference was almost certainly in relation to the growing tensions between the U.S. and Russia. Earlier this month, NATO launched its biggest ever war game exercise right on Russia's doorstep. Moscow responded by conducting provocative war games in the Mediterranean Sea. And Russia did this in coordination with the Chinese PLA. So this is the first ever naval drill that involved both superpowers. And the U.S. is also, we're getting some rising tensions between the U.S. and China. Now, the Global Times, which is a state media outlet owned by their ruling Communist Party there, has sent out a warning today saying that war is inevitable if Washington doesn't halt its demands that Beijing stop building artificial islands in the South China Sea. The newspaper said, if the United States' bottom line is that China has to halt its activities, then a U.S.-China war is inevitable. And the intensity of the conflict will be higher than what people usually think of as friction. So here we have all of these dire warnings coming out here in just the last few weeks. According to a report from Zero Hedge, a plan might be in the works for a nuclear attack right here on American soil within the next 12 months. Now, this is coming out of the Islamic State magazine. They claim that they are actively pursuing a nuclear weapon, that they have enough money to purchase this nuclear weapon from Pakistan, and it's intended for detonation on American soil. And they talk about how they could smuggle it right into the U.S. via Mexico. Now, this is all in an article posted in the terrorist group's English language online magazine, Dabiq. Now, British photojournalist John Cantley is the author of that article. You'll recall he was a photojournalist that was abducted by ISIS in 2012. He's been held hostage ever since and been seen in a series of their propaganda campaigns. Well, he seems to be leaving a trail of breadcrumbs for anyone who's actually reading this article. He gives a hypothetical play-by-play of just how ISIS might carry out this nuclear attack, saying, well, we might do this and we might do that. It's almost like the villain in a movie that must reveal exactly how their plan is going to be played out to the victim. Of course, this is then used by the hero in the movie to defeat the villain in the end. So is this possibly what Cantley is doing here by pumping out this very clear story of this hypothetical scenario of how they might smuggle in a nuclear weapon into the U.S.? So no doubt intelligence agencies are looking at this very seriously because at the end of the day, they backed ISIS to take down Assad, not America, right? However, such an action in America would actually help with that whole global governance plan because it would usher in a new era of revolutionary change here in the U.S. Just to take a quote out of the Project for a New American Century, it was written in 2000 and it was signed on to by the likes of Jeb Bush, Dick Cheney, and Donald Rumsfeld, says the process of transformation, even if it brings revolutionary change, is likely to be a long one, absent some catastrophic and catalyzing event like a new Pearl Harbor. So, of course, we've heard that again. And so something like a mushroom cloud hovering above a U.S. city would be something that would usher in this new revolutionary change, of course. So either way, the framework has been set. We're being given warnings by NATO officials. The HSBC is reporting that they're fearing a world recession with no lifeboats left. They say there is absolutely no margin for error as the economy falters. Likewise, Goldman Sachs is warning that the world is drowning in debt. So this poses one of the biggest threats to the global economy. And of course, we reported just 2 weeks ago that billionaire George Soros was cautioning that the planet was heading towards a third world war if China's economy collapsed. So here we have all of this orchestration from the globalists and the banksters warning us war is coming, something's about to happen. And of course, every time we see the U.S. economy deteriorate toward a recession and a possibility of a mushroom cloud in an American city, the S&P 500 limit shoots way up. So we know that this is all orchestrated. And of course, what happens when the governments are on the verge of economic collapse? They go to war. And that's why we're seeing an increased demand for safe rooms. The elite are getting ready. The wealthy are installing their safe rooms. Worried about riots and civil unrest, which, of course, as we know, is being orchestrated behind the scenes to take place this summer as well. So the notion that the elite are making these preparations for mass civil disorder is not a conspiracy theory. This is actually happening. Elites are actually moving to New Zealand. They're moving out of Russia. Billionaires are moving out of Israel. This is happening. They are preparing. Now it's time that the rest of us start making preparations as well. Obviously food and water, but what are you going to do when the grid goes down? How are you going to communicate with your friends and family? Coming up in the next segment, we're going to talk about a new terrifying EMP weapon that the Air Force is already actively using that could take down the grid in another country. So, of course, if they do something like that, a country is going to only retaliate. But it's really time that we all need to start making ourselves a little bit more self-sufficient and take back our power. Now, coming up, more scandals for the Clinton campaign. They just seem to surround her, but you will not believe what the mainstream media is choosing to cover. Well, the Air Force has confirmed the use of a terrifying new weapon, CHAMP, and it's a silent missile that can destroy enemy electronics with a microwave pulse. Now, this is according to Foxtrot Alpha. Once integrated, CHAMP will be a first day of war standoff weapon. The aim would be to permanently destroy an enemy's command, control, communication and computing, surveillance, and intelligence capabilities without hurting people or infrastructure. So how does CHAMP work? Well, the missile is equipped with an electromagnetic pulse cannon, and this uses a super powerful microwave oven to generate a concentrated beam of energy, and then the energy causes voltage surges in electronic equipment. This renders them useless before surge protectors have a chance to react. And the Air Force confirms that its CHAMP is already an operational system in the Tactical Air Force. So, of course, if the U.S. is known to deploy such a weapon, other countries are going to act similarly. You can take a look at a map to see the areas that are likely to be blacked out in the event of a high-altitude nuclear EMP attack on the U.S. Like I mentioned earlier, you really need to figure out what you and your family are going to do, how you're going to communicate if the grid goes down, and you can see the areas that are really susceptible to something like this. But heck, if these countries pay enough money to the Clinton Foundation, the State Department might just give them this weapon outright, might sell it to them. The International Business Times has reported that governments that donated millions of dollars to the Clinton Foundation soon received weapons deals from Hillary Clinton's State Department. No, it's not a slush fund. There's no pay to play going on. So despite the fact that the State Department had documented concerns about the repressive policies of the Saudi royal family, Boeing would deliver them $29 billion worth of advanced fighter jets. And just 2 months before the deal was finalized, Boeing contributed $900,000 to the Clinton Foundation. So that sounds like pay to play to me. Saudi royal family was already donating tens of millions of dollars to the Clinton Foundation before she became Secretary of State. Now, in fact, Clinton, who she's running this uber feminist campaign, asserted that it was in the national interest to make the deal with Saudi Arabia, And the Assistant Secretary of State, Andrew Shapiro, said that the deal had been a top priority for Clinton personally. Now, under Clinton's leadership, the State Department approved $165 billion worth of commercial arms sales to 20 nations whose governments had given money to the Clinton Foundation. So that number is nearly double the value of American arms sales made to those same countries during President George W. Bush's second term. And of course, weapons deals are approved by the State Department. So yes, Clinton was in control of those arms deals. So in all, governments and corporations that were involved in the arms deals approved by Clinton's State Department, it's between $54 million and $141 million to the Clinton Foundation, as well as hundreds of thousands of dollars in payments to the Clinton family. But there is nothing to see here, folks. Move right along. Nothing to see here, because all the mainstream media is reporting on today is Hillary's pantsuit t-shirt. They're just letting you know what you can buy if you visit her campaign store. So she makes billions of dollars in arms deals, and all we got was this lousy t-shirt. This is the t-shirt is the woman who has absolutely no style whatsoever. And let's face it, Chairman Mao wore it better. And so you can see right there all the stuff that you can buy if you go and donate to Clinton's campaign: pantsuits, pillows, onesies for the working mom, and a commemorative glass that's made out of the shattered glass ceilings. So all of this stuff is geared toward women. Meanwhile, very close friends with the Saudi royal family, and Saudi Arabia is internationally famous for their human rights atrocities. But that's okay, you know. She is a feminist, and everyone is ready for Hillary. So it was also revealed this week in some secret Pentagon papers. This report was released by Judicial Watch that the U.S. created ISIS as a tool to overthrow Syria's President Assad. And the purpose behind the Saudi Arabia-funded Islamic State was a simple one: use the jihadists as the vehicle of choice to achieve a political goal. Just like the CIA-funded Al-Qaeda had been used as a facade by the U.S. to achieve its own geopolitical and national interests over the past 2 decades.
Despite the U.S.-led air campaign, the size of their fighting force, U.S. officials say, is increasing monthly.
A 2012 Defense Intelligence Agency document declares the West Gulf countries and Turkey supported the opposition in Syria, namely Al-Qaeda in Iraq, precursor to ISIS. Right there, in the Pentagon's own words, Al-Qaeda and ISIS were created to isolate the Syrian regime.
Confirmed U.S. operation rooms backing Al-Qaeda in Syria. U.S. policy think tank Brookings Institution confirms that, contrary to propaganda, U.S. Saudi moderates and Turkey Qatar Islamicists have been coordinating all along. And then they're coordinating and commanding the groups in America, the UK, and the EU. So do you understand? I've told you this 500 times in the last 4 years or more. 500's conservative.
Mainstream media answers with giving credence to an article in the ISIS magazine, Dabiq, that states First Lady Michelle Obama would be worth $40 on the terror group's slave market. Can you smell the stench of propaganda? The article was allegedly penned by a jihadi bribe said to be an ISIS recruiter of young women. The Michelle Obama as jihadi sex slave story is merely another outrageous and sensationalistic propaganda piece among countless propaganda pieces, and thus build consensus for more direct military intervention in the Middle East, primarily in Syria, where the Bashar al-Assad regime continues to remain in power despite the effort of the U.S., the Gulf Emirates, and Turkey. The August 2013 DIA report predicted ISIS would declare a caliphate in Iraq and Syria. It stated this was exactly what the supporting powers of the opposition want in order to isolate the Syrian regime, which is considered the strategic depth of the Shia expansion. As noted, the supporting powers are the West, led by the United States and the Gulf Emirates and Turkey. The United States knew the opposition was dominated by jihadist elements it repeatedly described as moderate and would ultimately coalesce into what is now called the Islamic State. The Pentagon report accurately describes the fall of both Mosul and Ramadi in Iraq to ISIS. Given this, and the fact that the U.S. coalition continuously aided the sectarian Syrian opposition, knowing full well that this would then lead to an Islamic State, the consequence of which was the predictable fall of Mosul and Ramadi,